So, folks, thanks for joining this afternoon. This is Dan Sullivan speaking. I happen to be the RVP for Conducive Technology and cover the Eastern region. And pleasure to join you, I guess, this morning, this afternoon, or even this evening for some of our folks across the pond. Thank you for joining. Really excited to have Rick Cadruvi joining me today. Rick is our Chief Architect. And Rick, how long have you been with Conducive at other companies under Conducive?
Since the beginning.
So folks,
that's a very long time. I've known the owner for nigh into 40 years we've worked together.
Which is really awesome. So thanks, Rick, for taking the time to meet with us today. And also, we have a very special guest appearance, someone who's also worked closely with Rick over some 30-odd years, and that is a fellow by the name of Gary Kwan. He goes by GQ, and Gary's our Senior Vice President of Technology Strategy. GQ, you out there?
I am. Don't let the initials fool you. Initials are just easy to remember by, and I'm a techie at heart here. And I'm a youngster here. I've only known Rick and the owner for, about 38 years. So thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, GQ, and again, Rick, thank you, too. So, folks, we'll get started here. A couple things I want to mention beforehand. We've got some very exciting news at the end to talk about, and that is a Q4 margin enhancement program for you all. So it's pretty exciting news to deliver to you today, along with just a live demo from Rick. In addition, too, for attending today, we'll be sending out a not for resale NFR copy of our Velocity 7.x server license for you to install, try, use, etc. So you can actually see what it is we do and how we do it. There is a Q&A box. If you would please put in any questions that you have as we're going through. We'll try to make this as interactive as possible. Our previous webinars have been very interactive, a lot of questions. No question is a bad one. And we've got the two technical experts here today to answer anything, and I'll fumble along with any kind of sales questions or licensing questions you may have. So with that, let's get started. Again, you all know us as Conducive Technologies. As Rick said, we've been around for quite some time, 37 years in the business. We're the 12th oldest software company in the world. And we previously have been known as the Diskeeper Corporation, excuse me, as many of you may know. But we rebranded the company back in 2012 because the world changed. Virtualization entered into the scene, and you no longer defragged an SSD or a SAN. And so Rick and GQ and their team respun our software to now actually to prevent fragmentation from occurring in the Windows OS. So pretty amazing, and this is patented software, pretty amazing what it is we do. Because of the fragmentation prevention and also a patented DRAM caching engine that they added to our software, our customers are seeing anywhere from 50 to 300% application performance improvement on existing hardware. And for that, Gartner named us a cool vendor and said we should be installed in every virtualized initiative. That patented caching engine that I mentioned is very intelligent, very smart, and folks like you see here, like HP, Dell, Lenovo, Western Digital, they OEM the caching engine that Rick, GQ, and their teams developed, and they put it in their workbooks and laptops. It's under their own brand name, but you can appreciate the testing that they must have put that software through before they put their own name on it. So very proud of that. And because of all of the work we've done over the 30-plus years with Microsoft and Microsoft environments, we're a close partner with Microsoft. And because of what we do in virtualization, we're a close partner with VMware. And finally, very excited about a recent certification that GQ, Rick, and their teams just qualified for, and that's the Microsoft SQL Server I/O Reliability Certification. GQ, you want to speak for a minute or two about what you guys achieved?
Yeah, Dan, and I consider this a nice elite certification. Microsoft has these type of certifications to make sure your product is fully compatible and reliable with their products. In this case, Microsoft SQL Server. And not only because we had to go through stringent tests to get the certification, but we also had to go against a board of SQL experts at Microsoft to get this passed. And Dan, we're the only software vendor to have this certification. But we are in good company with, hardware companies like EMC, Dell, and HP that also have this certification. So this is a nice showing how well we work with Microsoft and how well our product works with SQL Server. Thanks, Dan.
Well, thank you, GQ, and again, congrats to you and your team and Rick. And in addition, folks, that certification was done in Azure, so our software not only runs on-prem, but also optimizes and reduces I/O in cloud environments. So it's pretty amazing what it is we do. So what I wanted to share next with you here is a little bit about the newest releases of Velocity 7.0 and Diskeeper 18. Phenomenal what Rick and his team and GQ have done, but no longer do you require a reboot to install our software in a new installation or to update from some previous versions, which is just amazing. So the software literally installs in minutes, folks, and begins optimizing immediately. I had a customer last week kind of say to me, "Gee, Dan, I've got to even reboot a server to install a print driver." So that's pretty amazing what you guys have accomplished. We've also improved our benefits dashboard that shows you what we're doing in your environment. Our new Velocity Management Console incorporates memory tuning alerts to kind of allow you to get the most out of the software across all your VMs, and you can see all of that in a single pane with the Velocity Management Console, which I believe that Rick will be showing you in a minute. And there just happens to be a quote there from one of our largest customers, Christus Health, which is one of the largest healthcare institutions in the good old state of Texas. But they have us running on over 2,500, I wish it was 1,000, Windows servers. But you can see here what Blake had to say about the no reboot feature. So again, kudos to Rick, GQ, and your teams for accomplishing that no reboot. So pretty amazing, folks. And again, as I said, you can install it in seconds. Your customers and prospects can have it running, and you'll know in a few days whether the software is going to do any benefits to your customers. So it takes no time. And again, as Blake said, it's set it and forget it. There's nothing for anybody to do. So with that, Rick, I'm going to turn this over to you and have you take control and walk us through your live demo.
Hey, Dan and Rick, just before we start, just want to tell the audience out there that we do like to make this interactive. And there is a Q&A, not the chat box, but the Q&A box over on the right-hand side of the WebEx. And if you have any questions during the session or at the end, please type them in and address it to everybody, all the presenters, so we can all see it. Thanks, Dan and Rick. Take it away, Rick.
I need to unmute. There I go. So I'm going to apologize up front. I'm having a little bit of throat problems, so you'll hear me clearing my throat from time to time, and I just want to pre-apologize. And then I want to apologize for Gary because he's a little too humble when he talked about we work closely with Microsoft. Some of the things we've been able to pull off, like no reboot, come from the fact that we have worked closely with Microsoft. In fact, we wrote the initial file hooks for Windows NT in the very earliest days to do things like defragging. I just recently attended PlugFest 30, which is these events that they have with driver writers, mostly people in the file system and the malware space. And we've been going since the very beginning. I think Gary attended PlugFest 1, so he's just a little on the humble side. So anyway, with that, let me give you a demo. We are constantly improving our product, and obviously the thing we care about the most is the performance. But down through the years, we've recognized that as techies, we don't always do a good job of presenting the value. So it's one of the things we've been working on for the last several years is doing a better job of presenting the product and presenting the actual benefits. So in the latest version, we've made some changes. We've tried to upgrade our stuff to make it a little easier. We wanted to make things more understandable. So things like in the IOs eliminated here, we put in some tooltips. You can hover over the tooltips, and as you can see, you get information about what this actually means. You can click on it and go get to the help. We actually will go out and reference web help if it's available first, and then go for the installed help. The reason for that is occasionally we run into situations where we haven't explained things as well as we'd like, and that gives us a much faster way to actually modify the help, and the help is actually context specific. This is going to take it from the local because my VMs do not have access to the internet, but essentially this is where the help is, and we go back and now we're in the thing. So we've done some updates like that to allow it to be a little more interactive and a little easier for somebody to see it without having to go and read the entire manual or say, what do you really mean by IOs eliminated, or what do you mean by file system optimization, or what does storage IO time saved really mean? So we've added those kinds of things. This is, just so you know, this environment I'm running on is on my local desktop. I have a bunch of different VMs that I use for testing and other kinds of stuff. So this isn't necessarily representative of what you might see in an environment. But there are things like we tell you what the data is for. You can actually change the reference of how long the data is for. So if you want to just see the last 60 days or 30 days or whatever, you're capable of doing that. We also show you the total workload on the systems that have been selected, and we will tell you how much of that has come from cache, what the current amount of memory is that's on the systems, and then how much memory is available for caching and used in caching. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that on this particular set of systems, you notice that the read-write percentage is fairly small, reads to writes. One of the things unique about our software, Dan actually mentioned that it's a really intelligent caching system. We're not doing caching the way normal people do, where you do first in, first out, or last in, first out, and you basically load the cache hoping you're going to get some hits. And then if you're lucky, you get hits, and if you're not, you have a scheme that allows you to remove the least likely to be hit data from the cache. And we do use a dynamic cache. We basically say how much memory is left over, how much memory is available. Let's use that for a useful purpose. In fact, for those of you that are familiar with the fiasco Microsoft had with resources on Vista, and that Vista was considered to be, terribly memory intensive, so much more so than Windows 7 or whatever, or I'm sorry, than Windows XP. You'll notice that all got fixed in Windows 7. Well, I actually know the guy that does the memory management stuff in Windows and at Microsoft, and I had a conversation with him about it. And all they fixed was the display in Task Manager. So instead of displaying that they were using this memory for things like caching and preventing page faults and all that kind of stuff, they just display all that memory they're using for other purposes to enhance performance as memory available. That was the big change in Windows 7 to fix the Vista problem. So there wasn't actually a real fix, but we take advantage of the same thing. We use memory that's not currently in use, and we're constantly aware that you may want to use that memory. And should you need to use that memory for something else, we back off. But one of the things we do is we look for the IOs that are most likely to get in the way of the things you really want to do. Now, that's not to say that we're not perfectly happy to cache your SQL databases and cache all your other data. But what we're looking for is the IOs that you're not normally going to think about caching, or that your application's not going to care about. And there are a lot of those that get in the way of performance in general. So you'll notice things like, it may be that we end up having a really great read IOs eliminated percentage, and you say, well, that's 44%. How could only 27 gigabytes out of 231 gigabytes, that's only about 12% or so. How does that add up to 44% of IOs eliminated? Well, for one, IOs eliminated isn't just caching, but it's predominantly caching in this case. And it's because we're very selective about what we remove. We want to take the least amount of memory and get the most amount of benefit for you. So we've got some really clever algorithms. We load cache not based on do we think we might get it. We load cache because we've already monitored the system and we have a really high likelihood of knowing that what we're about to load into cache is what you are actually going to want to hit. And they're the things that are going to cause you the most performance degradation in terms of bang for the buck. So that's kind of the introduction there in terms of where we're at. I'm going to show you quickly Diskeeper Professional. This is actually running on my desktop. So the other screens we're going to look at with Velocity and VMC are going to be strictly running in VMs that are on my desktop. But this is actually my desktop. And now, my desktop's not a normal desktop. I do a lot of testing and a lot of stuff, and I restore, multi-terabyte volumes all the time and stuff like that. So you'll notice that I have a huge amount of workload on my desktop, and I actually have a lot closer to the amount, 50%, even though read-write percentage is 89. My dashboard, read IOs eliminated is 58%. My numbers are a little closer, but it has to do with the kinds of stuff that I do. I'm not a normal user. But as you can see, I get a lot of benefit from my desktop. I just run it on my desktop while I'm doing all my normal work. And believe me, even though I have an Optane type, but I have an NVMe drive for my main system drive. This is a highly optimized desktop. I still get benefit. When I turn Diskeeper off, which I have to do from time to time because I have some other things I'm doing that I can't be running Diskeeper with due to my testing or whatever, I notice the difference. And so that's the whole reason I wanted to bring that up is we just get a lot of stuff. The other reason I wanted to bring this up is the numbers are a little bigger. And you'll notice that one of the changes we made in this version is we had some overflow problems. It turned out we really weren't expecting as large a numbers as we started seeing from the field from our customers. So we made some changes, so things like we use terabytes, petabytes, exabytes. We actually modified these so that the numbers are going to be based on how big the numbers really get. So if you're eliminating billions or trillions of read IOs, those are the kinds of numbers you're going to get as opposed to much smaller numbers. So we made those kinds of changes as well in this latest set of versions. So,
hey Rick, on the storage I/O time saved, that's the actual storage I/O time saved on your system because you know the latency values. Because you, as you said, you have some of the storage you have is very you use some SSDs and some other type of storage, but that's the actual storage time saved on your system, right? And so when they run on their system, they're seeing the actual storage I/O time saved on their systems.
Yeah, and you can see that my latencies are pretty small. So, my max is around 3 milliseconds, and my average is like 0.04 milliseconds. Yeah. So, and the way we calculate this, I do a lot of I/O, and that's how you get these kind of times. The calculation is essentially how much time would it have taken all the IOs that are eliminated based on the latency, and we have information. We don't show it here, although we do show it in the analytics page. We track data by the hour, so we know for every hour of the day. And based on that information, we make calculations of how much all the IOs were eliminated would have taken, how much extra time that would have taken, and that's how you get really large IO time saved. Is we know that the amount of time, and yeah, you could have 5 or 6 overlaps, so I could be saving you 5 IOs all at the same time. But if all of those IOs had to go through to your storage, they would have taken a lot more time. So it's not like it's calendar. We actually have real live cases where people have more storage IO time saved than the amount of time that they've actually had the software installed. And that's because, so here you see my date installed is a couple days ago. That's because I actually installed the latest version that we're currently working on. But this reporting data goes back to May of 2016, but because we try to preserve the data going forward and all that. But yeah, Gary, we make calculations based on the IOs that we're saving you, reads and writes, what the latencies would have been, because we actually track those latencies separately, and that's how much time we would have saved you if that data had to go to the disk. So, yeah.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, so let's go back for a second to VMC. We're going to click on the Select Systems tab, and you're going to see a series of systems. These are the systems I currently have Velocity running on my node. I have a couple dozen VMs, but these are the only ones that I currently have it running, and the only ones I currently have booted. So we're going to look at this. You can select whatever systems based on what's there currently based on your domain or whatever. This is my little domain is ctpersonal.local, and you'll get a list of the systems. You can select them or not select them, whatever you want to do, and we'll show you live data of what's going on those systems. So and things like workload, all of these columns are sortable. I can sort by, let's take total IOs eliminated. I can sort down or I can sort up, and so you have the ability to kind of pick and choose the data that you want for what systems you really want to see the data for, or maybe what systems make the most sense for you to do some additional work with, like such as adding some additional memory. One of the things you'll see here is the system status. These icons give you an idea what's going on. Now, in these cases, this is all going to be about memory. So this particular one's going to tell you that we have limited memory to work with. We are doing some good, but if you made a little more memory available to this system, we could do a lot better for you. This particular system, everything's operational. You're good to go. No real worry. This particular system here, it's going to tell you there's hardly any memory available. As a result, we're not able to do any real caching on this system. Now, these icons can also show you additional data. If it turns out that there's some other issue with the system in terms of one component of our software isn't currently active or isn't currently able to run, you'll get that kind of information as well in terms of a red or a yellow type thing. But we added this information to make it a lot easier for you to manage the environment and that kind of stuff. So another thing you can do, you'll notice there's a button, this is new as well, is download benefits. And if you download benefits, you will pop up with you will get a CSV file. And if you're using, as I'm using right now I'm using Chrome, not because we don't support other browsers. We actually support pretty much all the browsers. We actually say, by the way, Gary's going to correct me on this because he's the guy that does that makes sure what we actually really support. We actually really support Edge and Internet Explorer, some specific version, 11 or 12 or something, I don't remember, and above. But we work on all the browsers, and I'm using Chrome. And in Chrome, if I were to save that, that's going to go to wherever this save downloads is. If I'm using Edge, it'll actually ask me where do I want to save that file. But here's the benefits file, and this was a new addition as well. And one of the things that we wanted to be able to do is give a lot more data to you as to what's going on. So this helps us in terms of explaining benefits and other stuff. We have a whole bunch of stuff in here, like we actually know whether you're running SQL Server. Now, that's SQL Server, not SQL Express. We actually distinguish between the two because pretty much nowadays, if you have any third-party applications on your system, you're running SQL Express. And so this is actually, are you running SQL Server on these systems? And you'll notice that none of mine are running it. We give you information about caching, information about write IOs and their write sizes, how much, all of that kind of stuff. Extra IO capacity is how much additional capacity, IO capacity, did we give you? Where did I see that? It's right here, this column here. What additional capacity did we give you on that system? So you'll notice that on my Windows 10 x64 system, I've gained a lot more capacity, extra IO capacity as a result of running Velocity. And I've gained a significant amount on the others as well, but that one specifically I'm doing really well as a result of. And so that was an addition just to make it easy for you to pull the data and not have to just try to do screen caps or whatever of the data. So let me cancel that, go back to the main screen. It was a little confusing, the updating results in some of these buttons in a previous release. We tried to make those kind of changes. So besides trying to make the software perform better, because let's face it, what we do, we're kind of a set it and forget it application. In fact, we actually have, I believe, a registered trademark for set it and forget it that goes back a long time ago. But the truth is you have to kind of know, are we actually doing any kind of things? So some of the focus lately in engineering has been to try to make this a little more accessible and make it a little easier. But we always are, with every release, trying to add additional performance things. We were ahead of the curve on things like SSDs. We actually work with some of the very earliest SSD manufacturers. In that earlier slide from Dan, talks about various OEMs we worked with. We work with some of the earliest SSD vendors to do specialized software specifically for SSDs to do performance-related stuff. We currently have some research projects related to Optane and other stuff. So we're constantly trying to stay ahead of the curve. As Dan said, one of the rebranding reasons was we didn't want to be thought of anymore as just a disk defragmenter. We do a lot of file system optimization things. We also do a lot of general I/O optimization things. Our goal is to make your storage system perform as fast as possible, to remove as many roadblocks for your application so that it can do I/O in general. But having said that, we realize that as an end user, you need to see it. So you have the ability to check kinds of things that you want to do. You can update the results. We don't update the results constantly. We do update the results constantly, but not very often. And the reason is that to get the updated results, we have to ship data over the network. Well, again, you didn't buy your computer and your network so that you could have our software constantly using your network to send performance data up to the console. So we're very aware of that. Everything we do, we've been doing performance optimization and computing for a very, very long time. In fact, Gary and I have a rather colored past in terms of how he and I first met and the kinds of performance things we were doing in a military type environment. So we've been doing that kind of stuff. So we pay attention to all of it, not just how do we optimize your storage. We have this technology called invisitasking. Invisitasking is about us making sure that while we're optimizing your system, we are not consuming too many resources, that we're not consuming resources you're really trying to use for your stuff. So that's why we don't update the results all the time. But if you want an instant update, you can click Update Results and get additional data from the stuff. But we're constantly aware of, if anything we do that we don't want to be a performance problem, we're here to make your performance better, not to add additional performance-related issues. So that's why we have that kind of thing, and why the updates aren't constantly simultaneous 24/7. So yeah, and I've already kind of showed you the red, yellow, and oops. Let's go to Select Systems. The red, yellow statuses, so that we can tell you that there's some issue. And like I said, If it's a critical issue that has nothing to do with memory, it has to do with something else, we'll still show that, and we update data so that it'll be easier. And we're constantly trying to improve how do you get to manage the software? How is it easier for you to approach using this software, as long with trying to get better performance? Because we know at the end of the day that if it's hard to manage, or if you can't really see what it's doing, it doesn't matter if we're making turning the world upside down with incredible performance. You need to be able to see it. You need to be able to experience it, and all of that. So,
and Rick, where this can help is especially on SQL servers, and most of our clients out there know that when you're running a SQL server, SQL tends to try to load all its databases in memory, even though a lot of those databases aren't getting access. So what happens is it uses all the memory, so there's none left for us to use. So, it'll show red. And, from previous talks that we've had, where we get the best benefit is to limit the amount of memory that SQL uses to allow us to use some, and that's where we've seen great performance gains on their SQL servers. So this right here, you have a single pane of glass that you could see what the memory requirements are on each of the systems, and quite possibly where the SQL Server memory may need to be adjusted. So this is great, Rick.
Yeah, and we have some best practices documents that we've created, and some of them specifically around how to limit the amount of memory SQL Server will use, so that we have a little more memory. The idea is, if you remember what I said about caching in the beginning of talking, we're looking to eliminate a lot of IOs that get in the way of the actual essential IOs that have to go through to the volume. SQL Server's cache is only interested, same with Oracle, same with other application caches, they're only interested in the IOs specifically related to their application. There are a lot of IOs that happen on a system that have nothing to do with that, or have to do with specific metadata, or have to do with a file system metadata, that if we just eliminate those IOs, it will make a dramatic change in the performance of the application. So yeah, we have best practices, Gary, that will allow, and we have documents that tell you why we'd like you to limit a little bit of SQL's caching. Yeah, we could take over SQL's caching altogether. We've done those experiments, and we do actually get improved performance. It's not our forte. It's not what we really are intending to do. Our interest is in telling you, don't let SQL cache. Let SQL cache all at once. Just do a little bit of limitation, and we'll take care of a ton of noisy IOs, so that overall your SQL applications will perform even better.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks. Anything else? Because I do want to be sensitive to folks' time here and get through what we need to cover for them.
No, I think with that I'm done. I'll stop sharing and turn it back to you, Dan.
Great, Rick. That's awesome and well done. And folks, this is when you talk about being a trusted advisor to the organizations that you serve as VARs, resellers, and systems integrators, this really allows you to be just that. You can bring this technology to them, new technology, new results, new value add that you can bring to all of your prospects and your customers. Rick and GQ talked about SQL. We do a lot of studies. We're very IO-centric, as you can tell. So we do studies with IT professionals, asking them what problems they're having, et cetera, and we're finding year after year that the number of organizations that are calling out SQL as one of their performance issues has been growing steadily year after year after year. So that's why, and our software really does perform extremely well in a SQL environment. Again, it performs great across all Windows-based applications, domain controllers, file servers, SharePoint, Exchange. But SQL, though people are having the most problems with it, we can deliver the most benefits. And 7 out of our 10 new customers buy our software to solve their SQL issues and then expand across their environment. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides, but this just depicts what the most optimized I/O environment would look like in a virtualized world. As you know, it's been great for server efficiency, but it's been horrendous for I/O performance, because what happens is this optimized I/O environment gets crushed by these two inefficiencies, both the Windows I/O tax and the I/O blender effect. And with the Windows I/O tax, NTFS just wants to break up these nice, fat, contiguous writes, and it does it 24/7, 365, into these small random fragments. They hit the hypervisor, and you get what Gartner has defined, and I gather we worked with them to define the I/O blender effect, which actually reduces storage performance and increases latency. So if you're going to write a gigabyte of data here, it might take 100,000 I/Os. With our software in place, it might only take 50 or 60,000 I/Os to write that gigabyte of data. You can also think of it, folks, as we take half the cars off the expressway at rush hour, pack the remaining cars full of people, and then put them in an HOV lane that works. So by reducing all the I/O, applications just by nature run faster. So where do we sit? We sit up in the OS, so we're above everything in your environment and in your customer's environment. So if it's a Windows-based environment, it all works fine. We're above the hypervisor, HBAs, servers, any storage in the background, and our customers, whether it's hyper-converged, all flash, a mixture, they're still seeing these incredible performance boosts because it's the I/O that's the problem. So really phenomenal results with everybody. As I mentioned, bigger writes with every I/O operation. Our patented caching engine that Rick talked about, it uses idle DRAM, nothing to do. It does all its work by itself, and you can see the results on our benefit dashboard, and we guarantee to solve the toughest performance, or your customers can have their money back. And from a SQL standpoint, these are Microsoft best practices also, by adding more DRAM if possible, and also capping SQL, as Rick talked about. And then you can use our dashboards to see exactly what's happening in the environment. We have tons of customer examples on our webpage. I won't take you through all of these. Bell Mobility, just down here, happens to be the Verizon of Canada. Look at this. They reduced I/O to their SAN by 61% and got 3x faster SQL responses. I mean, unbelievable, the results that our folks are seeing. And you can see that, and there are even more here on this page and again on our website. University of Illinois, as an example, brand new all-flash environment. They had used Diskeeper before. They said, sure, we'll try your software. Within 72 hours before they installed us, their Oracle database took 4.5 hours to process on that all brand new flash environment. They installed our software. 72 hours later, that 4 hours went to 1 hour and 30 minutes, and we processed another 0.5 petabyte of data in the hour and a half. Just crazy results. But it's all due to what the software that GQ and Gary have put together. So why should you all love us? First of all, it's really a no bandwidth sell. It's simple either to add on to the bill of materials, or now with no reboot, it's so easy for your customers to try. It installs in minutes, and you're off to the races. And now here in Q4, previously we offered up to 40 points of margin for a new business deal registration. For those deal registrations in Q4, we'll add another 10 points. You can get up to 50 points of margin for a new business deal register in Q4, and that closes 90 days after the deal registration. So, our MSRP is roughly $3,800 per host. It's a host-based license or a per server license, but there's almost $2,000 to you on every host deal registered. And our sales are averaged to 3 to 5 to 10 hosts. And as you saw, that we have customers that have us on hundreds of hosts. So there's really a lot of revenue here for you. And quite frankly, myself or my partners in the West will do almost all the work for you, and you can collect the PO and the revenue. So, with that, you're going to be sent, as I mentioned, a Velocity and Diskeeper NFR. There are the contacts, but just get back with us. We're happy to work with you to install our host license in your customer's environment. Let them see it, install the management console that Rick took you through, and let them just see how easy it is to install and how hands-off the software is. There's nothing to do to reap all of the benefits that Rick was taking you through there. I mean, there's no other software like it on the market today. So, with that, GQ, do we have any questions?
We do, Dan, and first of all, here for you is from Joseph. Is this being recorded as well as being sent to attendees this session?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? You bleeped there for a second.
Oh, no problem. Joseph is asking if this session is being recorded, and will that be sent to all the attendees?
I'm sure we can do that. Absolutely. We'll send it to you. Yep.
Okay. Then Gio had two questions. Says, one, what version of SQL are supported in Velocity 7 and 2? We have a customer that uses different versions of SQL, and their SQL DBs are huge and consume lots of memory. They're also a VMware 6.5 on an HPE node cluster. Gio, we actually will support all the SQL versions because we're actually agnostic to the applications. We're just looking at the IOs down at the storage level and seeing how we can improve performance there. We mentioned SQL here just because it's a sweet spot for us, because it's very IO intensive, but any type of server, file servers, Exchange servers that are very IO intensive will help here. And then, that answers Victor. Does this help with Exchange server databases? Sure does. Actually, I think if I recall, back in a couple years ago, we did a in-house test here with Exchange, and we increased the transaction rates around 50-60% on Exchange server. Then, let's see. John asks, when deploying Velocity, what is the recommendation in terms of putting it on all VMs, or only the most IO-intensive ones, like virtual file servers? Are there any hooks at the host level? And John, you're not required to put on all VMs. You could just put it on the VMs that are the most IO-intensive ones. But we do recommend that you try to put it on all the VMs on that same host. And the reason for that is, and you're right, you have those VMs that are causing the most IO traffic, causing them, taking away the most bandwidth, but you still have these other systems still taking a little bit of bandwidth on there, and that can affect performance too. And so go ahead and put it on all the VMs. And of course, if you buy a host license, you can put it on all the VMs at no extra cost there. And are there any hooks at the host level? No. Right now, the Velocity running on the VMs is fully independent.
And GQ, if I could just add too, you saw the Velocity Management Console before. Rick had 3 VMs running, but think of your customers with 20, 50, 100, whatever. But you can use the Velocity Management Console to install by just clicking on the VMs, hitting Install Velocity, and in the next few minutes, because there's no reboot required, you're done. And it is so easy to go across multiple VMs with just the click of a button. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because it makes it, again, since you are covered per host for all the VMs, it's so easy to do. Just go for it.
Okay. Sorry, Steve. I just saw your message. I guess my speakers and microphone are a little better than the others. I just turned down my volume. Then Kevin asked, are you going to run over DK18? I'm not exactly sure what you mean there, Kevin. Maybe you could go a little more detail on what that is. And
I
then,
may make an assumption here, GQ. Thank you. So DK18 has now the same benefits that Velocity has. So whether it's a workstation, so your laptops, workstations, and Gary showed you working on his workstation, physical servers, etc. DK18 has all of the capabilities. It has its own management console and a little different UI than Velocity, but it does have the caching engine, and that was added back in DK16 or Diskeeper 16, if that happens to answer your question.
And by the way, this is Rick. The Diskeeper screen that I showed you was actually Diskeeper 18 and running. So yeah, what Dan said is accurate.
And just, to emphasize here, we usually recommend Diskeeper for the physical systems, Velocity for the virtual systems. But, we're not completely limited on that. You could run Velocity on some physical systems if they have a mixed environment there. So you could run the Velocity management console on the Velocity systems, and then with DK admin, and then you could deploy Velocity to those physical systems on that same environment. We do not restrict that, and it works just fine.
And I'll add to that one of the things we did put in Velocity, specifically for virtualized systems, I mentioned in my talk about in visit tasking, we're always looking to make sure that we're not causing additional issues. We actually have some statistical models to specifically look for, is there I/O happening on other of your VMs on that hypervisor or other resources being used that we would want to back off from the work that we're doing because we don't want to cause additional issues across the board. And so there are some specific things, but essentially the technology is the same across.
Let's see. I think that's it, Dan.
Okay, great. Well, thanks.
Wait, I'm sorry. No, I answered that one already. That was from Victor. It says, does this help with Exchange server databases? And I answered that earlier, and yes, it does.
And by the way,
Absolutely.
Gary, Exchange server has all kinds of interesting issues that we extremely help with, including severe fragmentation issues and other kinds of things. So Exchange servers, something we make a big difference in.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, thanks. So GQ and Rick, thank you very much for joining, folks. Thanks for taking the time. Again, look out for the NFR copies of the software and also a recording of this. And I can only say that we would love to work with you to, talk is cheap. While we have plenty of customer examples, what really matters is the benefits to your customer. So we'd love to install our software in their environment. Again, takes minutes, and there's, nobody else can say that. And the results will be occurring within a day or two, especially as the caching engine learns the applications. So definitely want to work with you if we can on that. And the flip side, for your side, where else do you get 50 points of margin on a new business deal today in the marketplace? For software that really does not have any comparison, there is nobody that competes with us and does what we do. So for a very unique solution that's so easy to install, making 50 points of margin, hopefully you'll see the benefits to yourself, let alone your customers, and reach out to us because we'd love to work for you. Did another question pop up here at the bottom?
It did. It's from Victor. What are some of the common applications that has problems? And, we can see, I can mention a lot of EMR applications, reporting applications, anything that is very I/O intensive that has to access your storage there to get the data. That's where we shine in, Victor.
And I would,
and also, too, as Gary mentioned earlier, I mean, Rick, file servers, domain controllers, web applications, that's why we say just install us. And let's show what we can do. I'm sorry, Rick, you were going to say something.
well, I was just going to say that when you're thinking of applications that have problems, think of your application that has been most affected by data explosion. So one of the reasons Gary mentioned EMR, in the medical field, the Affordability Health Care Act, one of the things it did is it required that all transactions with a patient have to be digital. Well, that just caused an explosion of data. So think about applications that for whatever reason, due to regulations, due to just the fact that you're doing a lot more with data nowadays, whatever it is that has had an explosion in data, those are the applications that are most likely to get really amazing reward.
Great.
No, Victor had another one, a little clarification, GQ.
Victor says, I meant what apps has problems with velocity where you had to turn it off? Well, I'm not sure we had to turn it off, Victor, but mainly there are cases where maybe it won't provide the same benefits. For instance, if it's mainly write-intensive, then read-intensive, of course, you're not going to get any benefits from the caching technology. For instance, we were just looking at a system that was 98% writes, 2% reads. Didn't get much benefits from that. So those are what comes to mind right now.
And so, Gio, you got a question here. Thank you, GQ, on licensing. So we're on one hand, we're not the license police, Gio, but we would, I'll say, require that you have all of the hosts in the environment licensed for the software. But, that may or may not be the case. And again, as I said, we're not the license police. We really work on a kind of a trust basis here with our customers. So I hope that answers your question. If not, I'm happy to talk to you further about it. But thank you for that. And thank everyone for your questions. So I guess with that, I'm sorry, another one, GQ, or we do?
No. Good questions from the group. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And that, as GQ said, appreciate it. So I hope this was beneficial for you folks. 50 points of margin, bringing new technology to your customers to solve their performance issues. What a winning combination. So please reach out to us. We'd love to work with you. Thank you for your time today, and we hope you have a good rest of the quarter. Thanks very much, everybody.